initiative. It's so great to see so many familiar faces. We have a very good presenter and an excellent skateboarder. Kind of inspired me to pick up my skateboard again. So, Brother Gabriel Cortez, born and raised in New Hampshire. His dad is from Costa Rica. A 24-year member of the Franciscan Friars of the Immaculate. And he's a 42-year-old cradle Catholic skateboarder for 32 years. And he will be sharing his perspective on bridging the faith gap of two countercultural worlds with one's talents. Brother Gabriel is friar in good standing, currently serving in Mother of the Redeemer Retreat Center in Bloomington, Indiana, with the Archdiocese of Indianapolis. Please give a round of applause for Brother Gabriel.
So I want to thank everyone. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. This is my third time in San Antonio, and so I'm just very grateful to be here. I feel very much at home here because of the Franciscan missions, and this is kind of where it all began with the friars and the missions, and so I'm just super grateful to be here, and I'm super grateful also and thankful for the those who work for the Archdiocese of San Antonio to organize this and to have me here to talk, at Theology on Tap. And my friend, fellow Timothy Dieter, he was always he's like, make sure you let everybody know that I was the one who started Theology on Tap. So he's the one. I think he was the vice postulator for the cause for the beatification process of Pier Giorgio Frassati. And so he's a friend of mine. He and I were in Australia. He got sent there in year 2000. I got sent there in 2001 to the Franciscan mission there. So we had Theology on Tap there in Sydney and in Australia. So that was a lot of fun. So I'm kind of familiar with the whole format. So I just wanted to again thank everybody for being here, for allowing me to kind of spend time with you in this beautiful venue and environment. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you just two videos that I worked with a company called Spirit Juice Studio. They're based in Chicago, and I worked with them a couple of times now, putting together some faith and sports videos, kind of like bridging the gap of the culture of extreme sport and extreme faith. So I'm going to show you those two videos back to back. They're only about 2 minutes each, and then I'll just get that'll kind of propel me into my talk. wanted to show that to you was because I was working with this company called Spirit Juice, and as the flyer kind of highlights, I wanted to, it's basically bridging the gap, using your talents. I called it, no separation of church and skate. and then the subtitle was, using your talents to share the gospel. And so that's kind of what I've been doing for the last 18 years now, or more. And it was my superior. It was my superior in Australia. He was actually American. We're all Americans over there because it was an American mission in Australia. And I was on my way to Aquinas College there in Perth, in the southwest of Australia. And I was on my way to Aquinas to give some talk to the kids. And he said, he goes, "What do you think about the idea?" I mean, because I hadn't really, I wasn't skating too much at that point. But he said, he goes, he spent a lot of time in Southern California, so he's familiar with the whole skateboarding scene, I'm sure. And he kind of caught me by surprise, and he said, he goes, "What do you think of bringing a board with you when you go to Aquinas?" It wasn't like a command or anything. It was just like, "What, do you think it's a good idea to bring it with you? Do you think it would help?" And I was actually kind of surprised because I actually hadn't thought about it. So I'm like, yeah, that's a good idea. And so he and I, my superior, we went to the skate shop. I hadn't been to a skate shop for a while. I'm looking at all the boards hanging on the wall. I'm just like, wow, it was all coming back to me. And so as I was kind of picking out all the components. It was fascinating. And so I kind of assembled this complete skateboard. And then and I used, and when I went to Aquinas College, I used it to, my normal format is you just the talk, Q&A, and then a demo for all the schools. I did 2 schools today. We had a blast. We did the same sort of format. And so I used it, and after the funny thing is sometimes school kids can, it's hard to get their attention, to get their intrigue up, and especially when you're talking about things that maybe they might find boring. And so, but when you use skateboarding, or any this is the whole point of the talk, is that, you use whatever talents you have to kind of bridge the gap between you and the other person or persons that you're communicating with. No matter what it is, it could be anything. It could be art, it could be engineering, it could be music, it could be science, it could be whatever, skateboarding. To bridge that gap and to communicate to the other person or a group of people, thoughts and sentiments that are worth conveying. And so when I was at Aquinas and sharing with them aspects of the faith, aspects of the gospel, we're going over the catechism and what have you. It was just a lot easier when you can clear 7 stairs and then start talking to them. They're like, it's like having sheep eat out of your hand. So it's just they're like, dude, you just cleared 7 stairs and you just slid the handrail and whatever else, and they're like, whatever you say is gospel. So I'm like, this is too easy. I was like, Lord, this is. I mean, because I sympathize with people who work with youth that often to get their attention. They're a hard crowd. Youth are young people are a hard crowd to kind of keep their attention. Where they're very fidgety, and I was always very fidgety, and my attention span was that short. And so, but when you're able to kind of use this sort of sport or talent to kind of to make that connection, it's just a lot easier. So I go out to the skate park twice a week, both for my own health, really. I jokingly say that skateboarding keeps me both young, healthy, and sane. And so I still go out to the skate park, but I don't approach the people there. I mean, I let them come to me if they want to. But I've had some really, really interesting experiences. And Yesenia, and the last time I was here, which was during the sweltering heat of the summer, we were just poor Eric. He was suffering from all the overheating, and the poor guy. He was. But anyway, I think we were at Rosedale. I think we were at Rosedale skate park, and it was just like I mean, I think we were being cooked like potatoes in the sun. I'm like, I'm flying, but he was like, he was frying to death. What goes on at skate parks is fascinating because I'm able to kind of communicate with people, and whether they approach me or however. The unwritten rule at skate parks, I started when I was 10, and so that was 1988. But the unwritten rule at skate parks is shut up and skate. You don't normally talk. It's very much like community life. It's very much like the Friar. It's all men together, quiet, active. So we're all doing our work, and it's all men. It's all the community. It's exactly like the Friar. It's like being at a skate park. So it's like right up my alley. So, but it's just so helpful because I've had so many conversations with young people about all kinds of things. Like one young kid. This was when I was in Australia. One young kid, we're about to drop into this quarter pipe. I don't know if you know what a quarter pipe is. It's just like, the little ramp. It's, imagine a full pipe, and then you got a half pipe, and then you have a quarter pipe. So we're about to drop in because there's this really cool skate park that we were at. And this kid turned to me and he goes, he knew us from the church and all that. And he goes, "Is swearing a sin?" I'm like, "Dude, we're about to drop into a half pipe and you're asking me questions of morality?" No, but I was very happy that he asked it, and so I said to him, I made the distinction between coarse language and blasphemy is worse, and coarse language should be avoided, and all that sort of stuff, and he understood it. He understood it straight away, and then we had this it was a fast and furious sort of like catechesis on the quarter pipe. So I was just like, this is so cool. And I've met so many people from all walks of life at the skate park, and you sometimes you would be surprised who shows up, who is there, who actually skates. Another example, there was this guy. His name was John. He was Greek. John Mavromeditis, a mouthful, and he was Greek Orthodox, and he was at the skate park. And I was on my way back from an event called A Day with Mary. It was a long kind of a Marian devotion day that we had. On my way back to the friary, and so I wanted to get my exercise in because it's basically it's actually from 9 to 5 this devotional day, and so with mass and devotions and the carrying of the Fatima statue and all that. And so on my way back to the friary, my superior had to do a hospital visit, and I was on my way back to the friary, so I wanted to stop, excuse me, and get my exercise in before I went back. And so I did, and I met him there. I met John there, and it turns out that he was about 38 years of age, and he was a retired, surprisingly, assistant cardiologist. So he was actually a cardiologist. Had set it aside because he didn't want to do that anymore. I wasn't sure why. My thoughts were maybe because of the whole issue and maybe controversy on organ transplants. Maybe he wasn't comfortable because he's a practicing, he's a practicing Christian, Greek Orthodox, and so there's this kind of like thing going on with like vital organ transplants and how these organs are harvested and all that. So my guess was that maybe he withdrew from that field because he probably saw a couple things that weren't, that didn't quite line up with the Catholic teaching. But so he set it aside, and now he was just there. There he was at the skate park, and so we're talking. So I met him. He introduced himself. I said hello. We're talking about theology, and and I was practicing my Greek on him. I'm like, yeah, have you heard of the Theotokos? He goes, it's not Theotokos. And he goes, it's Theotokos, or whatever, I stand corrected pardon my Greek. But he was a terrific guy, Australian, Greek, and we chatted. He actually bought me a Guinness, and we had a little Guinness together, and after we had a skate, we were all pouring with sweat, and we talked about the faith, we talked about the Blessed Mother, we talked about all kinds of stuff. And he's Greek Orthodox. There's that sort of like the difference of Catholicism with the Greek Orthodox with the papal with the Pope and all that. So, but it was just fascinating meeting people where they're at. That's what I love to do. One guy in Australia, one guy in Fremantle, which is just south of Perth, in a skate park there. It was a brand new park that was built just before I left to come back home. And I met a guy there, and he was smoking a joint, he was smoking marijuana. And he saw me, and we were skating together. He knew I was from church, and he goes, oh, you probably don't approve of what I'm doing right now, basically smoking this joint. And I said to him, I love to meet people where they're at. I'm not judging you. I'm not, we can talk about that later. But I'm here to kind of see where, what's on your mind, what's on your heart, what are you thinking about, how's life treating you? What are you going through? Do you, and so I love to meet people where they're at these skate parks, anywhere really, even in a pub. So I love to, kind of bridge that gap between, of non-faith with faith using the extreme sport of skateboarding, and it works every time. It's just, I had a terrific experience this morning at St. Gerard's in the city, and at Our Lady of Perpetual Help. It was thumping. I mean, just asking the kids what's on their mind and sharing with them aspects of the gospel and the catechism. And there was all kinds of really, really cool questions that came up as well. I told them who I was and what I do, and it's an avenue that not many people have access to, and a lot of people are intimidated by, because skateboarders, we're kind of hard and scary looking at times. We're not the most approachable people in the world. Especially I got a friend in Bloomington, in Indiana. He's covered with tattoos, even his face. I mean, I understand, on the arms of it, but he's got it all over his face too. He's got it covered. His face is covered with tattoos. He's got the big earrings and everything else. I'm sure if if a parent with a kid saw him cross the street to the other side, or whatever. But he's actually a terrific guy. He's actually, I see him at the skate park. He's actually a carpenter. He's a roofer. And so we have a chat once in a while. We're at the skate park, and I'll ask him how he's doing. And so, one of my practices very often is to I'm not the sort of person who lays it on thick. I don't like to kind of push things down people's throat or have you been saved? I don't do that. I actually introduce myself. You build up a rapport, you build up a relationship, a friendship, and then when you win the person's confidence, then you can share with them deeper things, about the faith and what you're doing. I tell them I live at the Franciscan Friar and I work at the retreat center. And then you kind of build a relationship, and then you kind of introduce them to concepts perhaps that they've never heard before. And also one of my practices, I like to hand out my medals. So I kind of, especially when guys do a really, really good trick. I don't know if you've ever been to a skate park, but there's some tricks that are dude, that is insane. Some kids just pull off some amazing tricks, and so what I do is I always have a little stash of medals, and I always give them out, So I kind of, so when some kid does a really good trick and he pulls it off, I give them a little the Medal of the Immaculate Conception, or what's now known as the Miraculous Medal, and I give it to him as a reward. I'm like, that was amazing, that was so awesome. You deserve a medal, and I give it to him. I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't have gold, all I have is silver today. So last time when Yesenia we were together at the, I think it was called Purcell skate park here. It was a tremendous skate park. I think it was $3 million skate park with the little swim area next to it. This kid was he was really trying this really, really cool trick, this big flippy trick over this trash can or whatever it was. We were trying to clear this trash can and do flips over it, and it's pretty high. You're flipping the board this high over a trash can or whatever it was we were trying to clear, and he's trying to land it, but he was doing it it was like a big spin. It was I think it's called a big spin, a big flip. It was called a big flip over this trash can. And he was trying, and he was so frustrated. The F-bomb was being dropped left and right. I was like, okay, all right, okay. It is what it is. I'll just kind of delete that for a while until, And And then I said to him, and then I kind of rolled over. So we're all clearing it. We're all like kind of clearing this trash can. It's a big trash can. And we're all trying to clear this thing, he was trying to do this really, really cool trick over it. And I could tell he's getting closer and closer, but he was just so frustrated because he can't quite, put it down. And so I'm like, hey, he's really close, So I said to him, I was like, Blessed Mother, and I was like, he needs this. I was like, he really, really needs this. And this is like my this is my foot in the door with him, So I gave him the medal. And I mean, it's not a luck charm. It's not luck. It's just like, it's an image of the Blessed Mother with a cross on their back. It's not like a magic thing. It's a reminder of what we believe and what we put our faith in. But to him, he doesn't, and I kind of gave it to him, and I said, you can do it. It's yours. You're this far away. I'm like, put it down. And Yesenia was kind of standing off, so she's just like, what is going on? And Eric just like, is he actually going to pull this off? And then sure enough, he comes bombing down down the banking, and he pops the fattest big spin over that trash can and landed it on bolts. I'm like, and we were about to leave, and I'm like, he landed it, and then he turns around. I mean, there's a lot of kids there. There's a lot of kids there. He could have looked at anyone. He could have looked at anybody, but he looked at us. Because we were about to leave. He was like, we gotta go. But we're actually leaving. He pulled it off. We're like, I'm like, you said we can't leave now. We can't leave. We gotta go back and congratulate him. So as soon as he lands it, he turns around and looks at us as we're making our way to, and he points at us. He's just like, I did it. And it's just like, and the connection was made between like I'm like, you can do it. You've got, I mean, maybe he recognized the image as the Blessed Mother. I'm not sure, but he made that connection, and so that's all I needed. It's all I needed was to him to make that connection and to land that trick and to kind of have that moment. So, and that's what I love to do. I love to kind of like support people in the things that they love to do and in their accomplishments. So I just kind of encourage people to kind of use whatever talent they have, whatever you do, it doesn't really matter. Everything can be used as a stepping stone. St. Francis loved to use all things, all created things. I mean, he's the author of the Il Cantico de Frati Sole, the canticle of the creatures, the canticle of Brother Sun. So all things, all created things, are a stepping stone to the Most High. He says, his prayer, how he begins, of the canticle, he addresses God, our Heavenly Father, as the creator of all that is good. You've made all things for us, and we use them for your glory. And so, this is just what I'd like to. This is the sort of message I'd like to kind of communicate to whether it's young and old. And so I like to do these school visits and skate demos and just kind of bridge that gap that could possibly exist. I mean, some people, everybody's where they're at. Like that guy who was smoking that joint. He's like, dude, you probably don't approve of what I'm doing. Let's just talk. Let's talk about you. Let's talk about where you're at with things. We'll get to that later. And so, I just love to, I don't want any separation of church and skate. That's what I want to unite it. I want to unite it. So I'm just super thrilled to be here and to share this message with everybody who's here, and just to kind of encourage everybody where they're at in their faith, because everybody's at different levels. Let's face it. I mean, my brother, who's also a Franciscan friar, actually, you'll be surprised, but my three brothers and we all joined the friary together. It's like, what's wrong with you guys? But it was kind of an interesting thing. I mean, it's kind of a long story, but we weren't. Just because I have the name of an angel, it doesn't mean I always was one. I was actually kind of like, you probably didn't want to know me before my conversion. But my brothers and we all had a conversion in Virginia Beach, Virginia in 1993. The same year that Father Don Calloway had his conversion when he was surfing. It's a funny thing, because he's now an international figure. He was the rector of the Shrine of Divine Mercy in Stockbridge, Mass. And he gave his talk. He gave his talk in in Trinity College in Australia, in Perth, and that's where I met him. And he said he gave his testimony of how he had his conversion in '93 in Virginia Beach. I'm like, Father, we gotta talk. Because we had a conversion in the same year, in the same city, and assisted by the same Filipino ladies. And I'm like, we gotta talk. So it was fascinating. So we all had this, we had this, my brothers and I had this big conversion. And we all started going back to the church, but my brother, see, I love stand-up comedy. And, but that's not why I'm standing up here. I won't hesitate. So my brother, actually, it's kind of funny. He made this deal with heaven. It's hilarious, actually. He's just like, see, we were all working at Virginia Beach. We had this we're all living these double lifestyles. Like being Catholic, but at the same time, our personal lives didn't line up with the gospel very much. And my brother, his name is Brother Didicus. His patron saint is San Diego de Alcalá, the patron saint of Franciscan lay brothers. And so he took that name during the novitiate. And so, but he had enough sense. I think it was my mother. She put him up to it. So when we moved away from the beachfront, and my parents bought a house inland after we moved to Virginia Beach from New Hampshire, and we had jobs down there. We were all working on the beachfront, and then my parents bought a house inland, so we had, it was quite a distance to the beach. And so my brother, we were going to school and going to work, so he wanted a car to get, to school and get to work and so forth. And so my mom said to him, well, why don't you say a novena to ask God for the car that you need? And so he did. He actually kind of, it was at her behest, and he kind of acquiesced and said, yeah, okay, I'll do that. And so I think he actually accompanied the novena with fasting. Something I would never do. I'm surprised he did. I had no idea he was doing this. And so he actually did this novena. But the deal was, if he obtained a car through this novena and through this 9 days of fasting, which I was completely not privy to, then he would assign himself to an hour of Eucharistic adoration. Something I would never do. I would never lock myself into an hour of adoration every week. Mass was long enough, So there he got, after this novena, he got a car like that. So he realized, he put two and two together. He's like, thank you. I guess prayer does work. And so he had enough sense, enough, integrity and fidelity to assign himself to an hour of adoration. My mom was going every night to adoration. She's a very devout woman, and so there he was. There he was going to adoration, every week, for 60 minutes to fill his slot. And so one day he asked me to go. I didn't want to go, but there was no one else. I remember the day. I wish I knew what day that was, because that was the turning point for me. And I don't know, maybe it was the solemnity of Christ the King, or the Feast of the Immaculate Conception, but it was an important day because I changed that day, but I wish I knew what day that was. And so he asked me, he goes, do you want to go with me? I'm on my way to St. Matthew's, the Adoration Chapel. And I thought, it was like, there I was, because it was like a moment of silence. I was like, go or don't go? I didn't really want to go. But there he's on his way. And this, at least we'll be driving in style. So the car that he had, the car that he obtained through his prayer, was a 1970 Cadillac Coupe de Ville, which he turned into a lowrider with Spanish tassels and new upholstery. I'm just surprised he didn't put hydraulics in it, So at the time, in the early 90s, a hydraulics thing was pretty cool, And so we'd blare Santana. Remember Santana? I don't know if you're, remember that song from Santana, Everything Is Going My Way? That's what we used to blare in the car. I was like, how ironic was that? Everything is going my way. On a natural level. So there we were. So I actually said yes. I said, so the house was empty. It was just he and I. And so he was in the kitchen, I was in the living room, and he's asking me this question, do you want to go to church? I'm like, no, but I didn't say that. And so I can imagine what the angels would like. The angels are probably just like, what is he going to say? What is he going to say? He's going to say, no, well, it changes the course of his future. So I said, yeah, I'll go with you. So we probably blared Santana on the way there, and on the way to adoration. The Cortez family is very, very crazy. You should meet my family from Costa Rica. They're insane. They're beautifully insane. And so there we went. We went to adoration. We pulled up. I'm like, okay, 60 minutes. Let's do your thing and let's go. And so the funny thing was, it's like we go into the adoration chapel. He kneels down or sits down and begins his reading or his prayers, whatever he did. And so there I was just kind of sitting there. I mean, I had no idea that the monstrance. I mean, I was like, how old was I? I was like 15 and a half or whatever, 16. And I had no idea that was the real, true, substantial presence of Christ. I had no idea. I mean, we had catechism as kids and that sort of thing, but I had no idea that was the Blessed Sacrament. I didn't know that was Jesus really, truly, and substantially present under the appearance of bread. And there I was, sitting there like a blockhead. And so it's just but at least we knew how to pray the rosary. And so my mom did teach us how to pray the rosary, at least mechanically. So there, from time to time we'd kind of get together as a family and pray the rosary. But that would fizzle out as well. So there I was. So I thought, okay, 60 minutes. I'm going to just sit here and do nothing. So I said the joyful mysteries. That itself was a miracle. So at my canonization, after I die, that's miracle number 1. For beatification, sorry. For miracle number 2 was saying the next set of mysteries. So you need 2 miracles. You need 2 miracles for canonization, beatification, and canonization. Those are my 2 miracles. So I said the joyful mysteries. Then I said the sorrowful mysteries. The luminous mysteries hadn't they weren't inaugurated yet. And then I moved on to say the glorious mysteries. And from that night onward, I never stopped going. I had to go. So it's no one forcing me. There's no one saying, my mom didn't say, you got to go with me. She didn't say that. So I went every night with her. And a year later, I was at the Friar. And so my brothers also, after my conversion, and kind of change, a little bit of a change of life, to say the least, my brothers and I, they all followed suit. And they all kind of, got rid of all their bad habits and all that, and all their skeletons in the closet. And so we all started going to church together, and all started going to Mass together, and, basically living the commandments, and so on and so forth. And then we all kind of discerned that, okay, maybe we should try to see if, we have a vocation. So we actually, to make a long story longer, we all actually joined the friary together in 1995, and so that was beautiful. That we all joined together, we all received the habit together, the postulant habit, That was just the beginning stages. After about a year, my 2 older brothers kind of discerned that it actually wasn't for them, and then they withdrew. And now they're married with, my oldest brother Dan has got 12 kids. My second oldest brother London, he's got 14 kids. My sister's got 8, so do the math. So I'm just glad I'm not in those households. I love those kids. And so they made up for my brother and I, who stayed in the friary. So no, they're great. So it's just really, really interesting journey. But now they use their talents. Again, going back to the original title of our talk, no separation of church and skate, because my brothers and I were skaters. My eldest brother Dan, he was a tremendous, amazing skateboarder. And my brother Didicus, he's a Franciscan friar. He's stationed in New York, and I'm in Indiana. And so he's a really good skater, and he's a very good snowboarder. And so he uses his talents as well. He's also a very good photographer and videographer and all that. And so all my brothers now, they use their talents, and I'm doing the best I can. I'm not as good as them as far as their videography and their photography and that sort of thing. But my brothers are super talented. Whatever they touch turns to gold. And they're just really, really good at what they do, and they use their talents to glorify God. That's what they do. And so I'm just really grateful for my family actually kind of having this conversion. Now, employing the talents that they have to to do good. Because very often, I mean, there's a lot of people who have all kinds of talents, but they don't use it for God's glory. And that's kind of a shame, because you can have so much fun with this. I mean, you know, and you're reaching the end for which you were created, and you're helping others to do the same. So, with that, I'll leave it with that thought, because it's just so important to use your talents to share the gospel, even in small circumstances, like in the grocery store, at the checkout. I gave a medal to a lady at the checkout in Australia. It was a little brass medals that I had made, with miraculous medals. And she said to me, she goes, "Oh my goodness," she goes, "this is the most beautiful thing I have ever received." It was one of the solid brass medals I had made. I gave them all away. I don't have any more. And she said, "This is the most beautiful thing I've ever received." And I went, "Really?" She goes, "Yes." And it totally touched her. So I love to do that. I would love to do that on a daily basis. So I just thank you for listening. Thank you for for allowing me to be with you and to kind of share these little stories with you. And I hope that this helps in your life. And if you have any questions, I would love to answer them. And I think we can now transition into the Q&A. If that's...
On your tables, you'll see that there's a little flyer. You'll text TOTSA to 22333. We'll receive your questions here, or I'll be walking around to receive some questions.
Or even comments that if anybody wants to share anything in comments or any perspective, I'd love to hear that too.
Text TOTSA.
Hey, I'm Daryl, one of the camera guys, but I was wondering. So I've got all the blackmail material back there. So I'm wondering, what was it when you first went into the friary? That must have been like a culture shock of infinite proportions compared to where you came from. What was that like? Were you blown away, or were you like, what am I doing?
All of the above. Yeah, all of the above. Yeah, great question. Thank you for asking that. It was a culture shock. It was a culture shock because I'm an outdoorsman. I mean, I grew up in New Hampshire, and so I grew up at the base of a mountain, and in the pine forest of New Hampshire, and just I love the outdoors. And then I found myself in the city, like it was all like everything was brick, and so I had to leave Virginia Beach and I had to come back up to Massachusetts in a city of Massachusetts that had very little vegetation, to put it. So I, as I visited for the first time, I found it very, very hard because I felt like the walls were closing in on me. I guess that's where we get that expression, that word claustrophobia. It comes from the word cloister, claustrophobia, because that's what every monastery or convent has a cloister. So you had this sort of claustrophobia of like, wow, it's like this is like kind of reality starts to set in. Like, okay, is this going to be the rest of my life? And all these thoughts race through your mind. And so I was kind of like, I'm fresh out of the beach culture, sand and waves and sun and skate. I rode for ultralight surf and skate down there in Virginia Beach and doing demos and that sort of thing. And going, my brother Dan was like, his band would play for the demos and just always outdoors and enjoying, I was a very, very active person. And now, even though I had this sort of I had developed my spiritual life, I was praying regularly and attending Mass, I still had that in me to be outdoors and to be amongst the trees and the nature and the ocean and all that. And so it was hard. I was really, really hard, and I had to call. I was 17, so I called home many times, like, Mom, I can't know if I can do this. She's like, hang in there, you can do it. So So yeah, that was difficult, but God's grace can carries you through, and if God taps you on the shoulder, He'll give you the grace to kind of persevere in that vocation. As hard as it was I managed to push through and to heed God's call and become a friar. And so it was only with God's help, and through the intercession of our Blessed Mother, and just reciting that rosary. That's what kind of kept me strong. And then it's kind of like, it's like a faith. Faith is like a gift. It's like a muscle. You got to, and it's like faith. You got to exercise it, and then it gets stronger and stronger, and then it becomes easier. So yeah. But then this was hard at first, and then gradually it became a little easier to say. So there's another question here. Are you the only brother friar that has an Emmy? That's really cool. That's a really interesting question. But yeah, so the video that you just watched was the Spirit Juice Studio submitted that at the Chicago Midwest chapter for the regional Emmys. The first one, the Salve Regina. Then you saw the behind the scenes, and so we shot that in 3 days within the vicinity of Chicago. And then we had a great time doing it. It was just like we were just a bunch of kids. It felt like we were like a bunch of kids with a camera, and we were just filming and having fun and skateboarding and that sort of thing. We had like a little routine that we were on. We were a little thing that we were following. A little list of camera shots. But we shot it in 3 days, and we got it all. We captured all the footage in just 3 days, and then they edited, they put it all together. And then they submitted it to Chicago Midwest chapter, and we got first place. We got an Emmy for that. So that was their first. That was Spirit Juice's first Emmy, and so I think they subsequently got other Emmys as well. And so we were super stoked about that. But am I the only brother who has an Emmy? I don't know. I think so. So it's kind of funny because I jokingly say, like, here I am, Franciscan friars. We got a vow of poverty, and I've got a statue of an Emmy, gold nickel plated, hanging on my wall, etched with my name in gold. You see this, the angel has the wings and he's holding the thing. I'm looking at it, I'm just like, what a contrast. It's like something wrong with this picture. But it's just always, we were super stoked about that. We're actually working on another one. So we just recorded another chant, and I submitted that to Spirit Juice, and Rob Kazmark, who's the director and the owner of Spirit Juice, he's super stoked about the next video because he can't wait to kind of get launched into that. And so that's going to include snowboarding and skateboarding, I think, together. So that'd be really, really cool. So if you keep that in your prayers, that'd be great. Another question is, how do you get over the shyness of talking the gospel in everyday life? Good question, very good question, because a lot of people have this difficulty or challenge because it's hard. It's just like, people, especially nowadays where everyone's like, it's like, do I talk to that person? Do I pretend that I'm talking or texting so they don't talk to me? I see that a lot, especially me in my potato sack. People I know some, it's funny, one lady, it was just, I forget where I was, but I could tell she was pretending to be on the phone so she wouldn't have to talk to me. I'm like, don't you want to talk about a person in a potato sack? No, but it was a little intimidating. So people don't know sometimes how to communicate, or whether they should communicate or not, or whether they should start talking, or what have you. And people can be shy. There's an element of shyness. What do I say? They feel like, I should say something to this person. Maybe I shouldn't speak. I do want to share the gospel. I'm a Catholic. I want to share the gospel, but I'm a little bit shy. What should I do? That's why I always begin. I like to say, begin small. Don't try and bite off more than you can chew. If you just that's why I carry around my medals, because everybody loves a giveaway. There's always something to kind of whether it's the pilot on the plane, or the waitress or the waiter at a restaurant. They're looking after you. They're looking after you. They're pouring your drink. They're serving your meal. And what I like to do in these settings, I like to since I'm being waited on, I like to kind of give back. I don't want to just take. I want to give back. And so I always I said, thank you for thank you for all this, the drinks, and the food's terrific, blah blah blah. The music's going, And I pull out my medal and I go, this is for you, this is for you. They're like, oh, really, it's beautiful. It was like, what is it? And I was like, okay, whoa, this is a big one, And so that's how, begin small. Don't try and sometimes people feel like they need to kind of jump into people's lives and say, do you know Jesus? And I was like, it doesn't work that way. I mean, you can do that. If you feel moved to do that, that's cool. But sometimes it starts it's a gradual thing. You meet people. It starts with small, incrementally. You kind of introduce yourself to people's lives, and then when you build their confidence, and then you can introduce them to deeper things. How's life treating you? Do you go to church, or even before you get to church, even before you get to asking them about church, you can ask them how life is treating them, and you can tell them what you do, and so on and so forth, and give them a chance to speak as well, and to pour out their heart and their mind, because a lot of people are lonely, and they want to actually. They do want to talk. People do want to talk. We're social beings. So the shyness is the ice that needs to be broken, and the ice is not very thick. So once you break that ice of shyness, then people kind of unpack themselves, and it's beautiful because everybody has a story to tell, and everybody's story is beautiful. So begin small. Use the setting in which you're in to introduce a conversation. I'll give you an example. I was on the plane on my way to Los Angeles, and that was the very day. The day I was on that plane was the very day that we won the Emmy. My brother, when I landed in Los Angeles, my brother Didicus called me up and says, "We got first place. We got the Emmy." I was like, "Sweet," And so, but on the way on the plane, I was sitting next to a lady. I had window seat, and there was a lady next to me, to my left. And then there was another lady in her 50s, and she shared the aisle seat. And the lady in the middle, she seemed to be she had a lot on her mind. And I'm at the window seat, and I'm just I love flying, and I love looking out the window. I'm like, oh, that's so beautiful. And this person's in agony. I can tell. I read body language really quickly, and so along the lines of this question of kind of breaking that shyness and kind of talking to people and sharing the gospel. I was sitting there, and I don't like to leave people in that state. Even if we don't talk about the gospel, even if I don't, I like to console people. I like to take the edge off of people. It's if they're in pain, and I could tell. I read body language. I read body language very, very well, and I could pick up on the fact that she had a lot in her mind, and she was just kind of And so, I'm gonna say half the flight, I didn't talk to her. I don't like to kind of pry. So so I'm just kind of using my Catholic imagination as to how to kind of take her mind off of things, And so I was looking out the window, and we were at this point we're flying over the Colorado Rockies. It was just gorgeous. It was just snow caps and beautiful. I was like, that is insane. I'm like, and so I was like, where's my moment? And so the window was how they're kind of crushing seats together to fit more people in there? So the window is more right here than right here. So I tapped her on the shoulder and I said, have a look. And so I leaned forward so she could look out the window. And I had to, and she goes, oh, that's beautiful. I'm like, yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? And then we started talking. It turns out she had a lot on her mind. Her husband just left her for another woman. And she was raising 2 kids. She's on her way to Irvine, California to apply for this job. She doesn't know how it's going to go. She lives in Indianapolis, because that's where we're flying from Indianapolis to Los Angeles. And she doesn't know how it's going to go. She doesn't know who she's meeting up with. She got this person who's kind of who's looking at her resume. And she's got this horrendous situation that she's in. I'm like, I knew it. I could sense it. I could sense that she was she had this waves of concern. You know who it was? It was Miss Indiana. I was sitting next to Miss Indiana, going through all this. I'm like, what are the odds? And so she told me about the situation she was in, and she actually had a little tattoo on her wrist from Corinthians, 1 Corinthians. Love is patient, love is kind. And she had a rosary around her neck. And she's not Catholic. She's some non-Catholic denomination. And I said, do you know what that is? You got a rosary around your neck. And I said, what you have around your neck is what I have hanging from my hip. And so we talked for the entire time. And the lady who was in the aisle seat, She was a good Christian lady. She wasn't Catholic, but she was a devout Christian lady. We were talking for the entire time about God and philosophy and life and family and we had this amazing conversation. And at the end, we were literally landing the plane, and we're still like unpacking everything. And then when we were time to get off, the men who were in front of us in their seats, they turned around. They're like, "That was an amazing conversation. We wish we could have turned our seats around." And I'm like, "Oh, I wish we had that possibility to just swing around and bring in the tap, just talk." So we had this amazing conversation. And it began. But the thing was, we're supposed to share, goodness, truth, and beauty. It began with beauty. It began with the beauty of the mountains, and from there, it began. We turned with the conversation kind of morphed into things that were very substantial and very wholesome and very uplifting and very edifying. And so it's like incrementally you kind of introduce yourself to people, and it works. It really works. Okay, so yeah, so that's basically. That was the third question. So if anybody has any comments or any questions, feel free. But I just I wanted to thank basically all the employees of the Archdiocese. This has been super cool being here and sharing the gospel. Last time Eric and I we actually did the El Camino on bikes. With his daughter's bikes. We actually strapped the skateboards to the backs of the bikes. We had all our gear. And we biked the entire El Camino with all the missions. It was like the most incredible experience. We had shots along the San Antonio River, and so I want to thank Eric for that. I want to thank Yesenia and everybody, and Veronica and everybody, and Xavier, and Juan Carlos. I met Juan Carlos at not SLS, but the NCYC in Indianapolis. And so I've just made so many good friends here, and it's just been so wholesome. And the Salesian sisters, I'll be kind of doing school visits. I'll be doing school visits all week long, all week long. And so it's just, I encourage you just to, keep, fight the good fight, keep the faith, and continue doing what you're doing, because all of you are my inspiration. I mean, I'm like your biggest fan. I don't know if you know that, but I'm like your biggest fan, and I love spending time with you. And so I want to thank you all for allowing me to spend time with you and to kind of share my little corner of the world and my corner of life with you, and so hopefully I can get to meet more of you and. Don't be afraid. As Pope John Paul, as Saint John Paul said, be not afraid. Be not afraid to share the faith, to introduce yourself to people, and to bridge that gap, and not to separate, church and state, or whatever you do, or whatever your talents are. Use those talents to share the gospel, because you'll be surprised. People are more open than we realize. So I want to thank you for listening, and thank you for allowing me to spend time with you.
Before we end this night, we have a few announcements. On your tables, you'll see you have some prayer cards and some goodies from the Archbishop's Appeal. We also have some events coming up. February 15th, Saturday, from 8 to 4, is going to be Midwinter Gathering. It's going to be $15. And if you're a young adult, come and join us. We're going to be going over Christus Vivit, encountering the young church. So we're going to have a lot of great speakers. It's going to be held at Antonian High School. If you have any questions, we have some information over here on the side. If you know any youth ministers, also, March 21st, from 8 to 4, we're going to have Youth Spectacular, again at St. Mary's University, and we have more information on the side. Thank you so much for coming out. We hope you guys have a safe night, and we'll see you February 18th for Worship on the River. And in February, we'll also have CRS speaker Mr. Gomez for our next Theology on Tap. So thank you, and have a good night.